Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
Thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's a real word I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
Can't take that away.
You know, that's my take on it. Like, what's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact. Hey, we're all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only Protonic reversal. Welcome to it. Episode 259. 259 episodes of this particular show. And tonight we have a very special guest for you. A much anticipated band from my side of things is Wavebreaker. I'm a big fan of Turbo Lightning as well as Batwings Catwings, and I'm a big fan of the front person of Wavebreaker, who's actually a returning guest. Oh, you did do a joint appearance last time, Dana. But yeah, Dana Viloria, welcome to the show.
Hey, Conan, thanks for having me.
I'm very excited that you have that. There's the waves are breaking, so to speak.
Finally.
How many hacky people you talk to are going to be saying that? I'm sure, but it's been a while. You've had this percolating for a couple of years now, right? I mean, it's kind of been gestating slowly, right? Is that?
Yeah. We've been working on a full-length record for like 3 years now, and just things have just been moving slow. Like stuff keeps happening. Everybody has like real life stuff, and just also formulating the whole story behind the record and all that, and sort of like getting to know ourselves as people, like as the world is transforming before our eyes, and getting to know ourselves as a band and kind of like reimagining and rebuilding what we're about.
Well, yeah, I mean, it occurs to me that the band is almost like, I almost overuse this phrase, but I always say like springing forth fully formed from the head of Zeus, like in Greek mythology. You're already prepped and ready, but there's been this great runway planning this out and kind of what kind of band it is, what the presentation is going to be like, so on and so on. And that's without the fact that, you have adults with adult lives, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit to that, because it does seem like a band with a clear message. Mm-hmm. Like, for lack of a better term, people, sometimes use message bands as like an insult or something. I don't think that's an insult at all. I think that's actually laudable, especially in this very direct time that we live in.
Yeah. So I guess like I can share a little bit of a story behind it. In like 2016, we were actually a band called Batwings Catwings, and we had been playing for a pretty long time. Like we started the band around 2009 to 2010. And we put out a bunch of EPs and stuff and singles. And in 2016, we went on like a little tour to Japan. And that was awesome. We had some friends in Japan that helped us set up shows in Tokyo and Osaka and Kobe. And it was a really good time. Highly recommend like DIYing that and making it happen for any band. So we were on that little tour, and then as soon as we flew back, it was on election day when we flew back. And yeah, and
wow,
you know what happened. I don't have to say it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like a lot of artists, had this moment where, we were all trying to figure out, like, what do we do next? Like, we have a social responsibility to react to this moment that we're all enduring together. And so we kind of started to rethink what we were doing as artists. And then I had a personal moment where I was really struck that whole year about the events happening at Standing Rock. And so I decided I was gonna, like, try to do something and, like, get out there and just, see firsthand what was going on. And just, I was just really inspired from a distance, seeing this, like, resistance happening, this really grassroots movement that was Indigenous led. And I just really wanted to support that. So I went and I drove with a few friends from Los Angeles to North Dakota, where the Standing Rock camp was. And we drove like 30 straight hours. Prior to that, we had collected a bunch of supplies and dollar donations from people. And so we were coming with just, supplies and money for the camp, and just delivering that face to face to the tribal leaders at the camp. And we were there for just a short time, but, just what I saw just inspired me so much. Like, it was like an autonomous community, basically. This camp with like thousands and thousands of people, everybody loving and respecting each other. Everybody had what they need. There was like a food tent. There were medics and doctors. There were, shows happening in the middle of the night, like rap shows and stuff. And everybody had warm blankets and clothing. And I was just kind of like inspired by that Indigenous-led movement and felt like there was something there that I really wanted to try to amplify. And so, I was there for just a short time, and I really felt like, well, what is my responsibility as a person who has now like witnessed this movement happening firsthand? What can I do as an individual? And so I kind of just started writing songs. We had all these demos, and I sat down and just started writing songs about whatever felt, resonant for me in that moment. And I think some of the songs started out like with a little bit of outrage, but over time, as our songwriting as a band sort of evolved together. And I also want to credit my bandmate Cindy, who played a big role in really like shaping the feel of our songs and the feel of our music, and just having her sensibility, kind of helped me realize like, okay, this idea of punk music doesn't have to be this thing that's like hard and gnarly and edgy and angry. Like, me being a woman of color and Cindy also being a woman of color, we can bring our own sensibilities to this genre and sort of reimagine what we're creating sonically. And even, I guess the only word I have to say for it is like brand wise, and really kind of like rethinking, what are we about as a band? Who are we? What do we want to represent? And so it just took all this time, like the past 3 years, to really fully form that and like take, some of the lessons that we were learning about ourselves along the way and just incorporating that into the art that we were creating, and just learning how to do music in a different way than we ever had before.
Yeah, and the melding of the direct action and politics and things along those lines with the music doesn't seem like a tacked on thing in any way, shape, or form. It seems very much like part of the overall whole, like part of the superstructure of the creative entity. And a few things, I'm going to throw down some notes on what you said, that LA to Standing Rock, as you mentioned, that's like a trek. That's like a Lord of the Rings style trek. For those not familiar with the geography, that's a pretty long way. So that's a pretty investment of action to commit yourself to that. And then also it occurs to me too that was a good example of like a bottom up democratic action too, in the same way that years earlier Occupy had been, and things along those, and that it's kind of a rare thing to happen in U.S. politics. I mean, certainly there are examples of it here and there, but it only seems like it's sort of like allowed to happen now and again. And it's always interesting to see what comes out of that. And so going back to, because I was, as you know, was a Batwings Catwings fan. And, you know, that the message of that band seemed to be more like, hey, let's have fun, be friends, and do cool stuff, which I'm all for all of those things. But but it seems like this hits a little deeper, and it hits, and it's the messaging seems to have adjusted with the times, and you've done a very good job of articulating where everyone has come in with that and change with the times. But do you feel that there's a lot of bands doing this? Because I would kind of say that I don't think that there are.
I don't know of a lot. Like off the top of my head, one really, really great band that I love called Downtown Boys, you know, have this sort of political edge to their music, I guess you would say. And, you know, they promote a lot of the same ideologies that I support also. And I really admire what they're doing and want to shout them out. And I would love to know from other people, you know,
maybe they're out
or more. I would love to just like connect and collaborate with lots of different people who are about the same things. Yeah, I wish there were. But also for me, like, I can't really speak to this that well because I don't follow new music very well. Like, I'm not that good at that.
Yeah.
But I would love to know from people out there if there are other bands that we should be listening to and, you know, connecting with.
Well, and that's always, again, that's something sometimes that shows like this can be good for, is connecting like-minded together. You know, he said, hopefully, crossing fingers, but also it just occurs to me too that, you know, even just like platforming, not just people of color, but women of color in a very active, boisterous role, unapologetically advocating for, I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big deal just representationally, but it's also a big deal, you know, that's good as well. And so that's something where like can kind of attract like, but the whole way and the slow ramp up with everything and having intrinsically tied into these orgs and specificity. And I don't want to get down on some bands that maybe have positive messaging, but is this more sort of amorphous of like, hey, you know, don't be a jerk. Okay, that's a good message to have for sure. But this goes beyond don't be a jerk. This is very specifically like, hey, pay attention to these organizations. Here are the links. Here's why these organizations matter. Here's why you should care about that. I think that's an adjustment that I think is almost necessary for these times, and it just occurs to me I don't have much of it. So I guess where I'm driving at with all of that is, anytime you get into specificity on things, some folks feel that it can kind of narrow what you're trying to do overall. But it seems like it's a part of the vital part of the process to what Wavebreaker is doing.
Yeah, totally. And I would say, like, I don't really think of us as just like a band. I guess you could call what we're doing a sort of political platform. Basically, we want to, you know, catalyze change for one thing, but we also want to, you know, encourage discourse and learning among the people who are paying attention to us, and you know, like elevate issues that are important to us and important to me especially. I'm really fortunate to have bandmates who just really support me and have given me this platform to just be able to talk about whatever I want to talk about.
Right.
Like, I would say, like, not everyone in the band is like super political, and I wouldn't even call myself political either. I feel like our music is not really political to me. It's personal, because a lot of things that I'm talking about and singing about are just essential things. Like, this world is not sustainable without the revolutionary change that we're calling for. And, I'm just a human being who cares about other humans and about our more than human kin, which are the animals and the plants, and about the earth. And it's that simple to me. One lyric in one of our songs is land back, rematriate, decolonize, and liberate. And that's what I believe in. I really believe that our only possible path forward in the face of this destruction and devastation of capitalism and the police state and the prison industrial complex, white supremacy culture, the only way to rise above that is to return lands to indigenous hands worldwide, and to restore matriarchal societies that were prevalent in a lot of indigenous cultures, including my own in the Philippines, before the Spanish and the Americans came and colonized our islands and our bodies and our minds. And so the way we do that is to first decolonize our own minds. And I think that's where our music comes in. And I want, people to sort of listen to our songs. And, more importantly, hopefully later this year, we'll be able to release the entire record. The entire record is kind of like a body of work that takes you on a journey through, this process of decolonizing your mind and really, like, making a commitment to being a revolutionary person. And also for me, I realized along the way, I've always kind of been averse to this idea of being a so-called front woman. Like, I really don't like that. Like, at times I felt like it's been kind of like forced upon me to just be that. But I realized along the way, like, I do have, in a way, a responsibility to step up and do that as a woman of color. So, I have a great opportunity and great privilege to, make music that empowers women of color, see themselves represented in this genre and in music in general, and hopefully inspire people to do the same thing. And also, just a big thing, I'm a storyteller by trade, so something that's really important to me is amplifying other people's voices and holding space for people to tell their own stories. So we do a little bit of that on this record, and hopefully in the future we'll also be able to collaborate more with people, and just work really closely with organizations too, and organizers, to really elevate their message and their mission work. That's what I want this band to be. Don't know quite exactly how to do that aside from, just grassroots, talking straight with the people that, I feel are on the same level, and seeing how we can do things together, but it just takes time.
Well, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, right? And
yep.
I just think back to, I think the first time I ever saw you perform was with Turbo Lightning. And, which I thought was fantastic. Loved every second of it. Totally into it. But what occurred to me afterwards, kind of listening to people talk outside, was that how kind of a big deal it was for certain folks attending that to see someone like you being a front person, reluctant or no, but commanding the stage and singing these. That what a big deal it was, and that was something that I'm like to think I'm a little bit more on top of it than maybe the average bro, but it was something that was like, oh yeah, totally makes sense, right? Because you got, especially in this musical genre, which is just tends to be dominated with usually dudes and usually dudes that look a lot like me, and have a welcoming space that is open to having different kinds of folks, not just be there, but be part of the art and part of presenting something bigger than one's own self, which to me is what music community should be. I'm glad people are starting to discuss it now. I feel like that was really backgrounded for a long time, and I feel like the conversations about it tend to be reactive rather than active. Which is to say that it's very easy to point out a problem and say like, hey, this is this is just kind of like a boys club or whatever. Okay, well, cool. You're pointing out the symptom, and I agree. But unless you're not as like a, hey, I did this, pat me on the back kind of situation for inclusivity, unless you're having inclusivity as part of the foundational structure of the community, I don't think you're going to see real changes. And it just occurs to me, like, because I think a lot about stuff like this, and it occurs to me that you're taking those same sort of music community ideals and concepts, but applying them also to like greater, like, human being living in this world, living in the world, not as a straight cis white dude. And like, it's impressive to me because I think that a lot of people are very tied into the outrage machine. And there's a lot of things being focused on that to me don't advance equality and don't advance justice. They advance catharsis.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at with all that is, was that a natural progression from playing, meaning, Batwings, Catwings, Turbo Lightning, like, playing shows and being out in the world? Obviously, political events being what they are going to be catalysts as well. But did that come up in that same way kind of organically? Because again, my experience is going to be different from yours, flat out. And I acknowledge that. That doesn't mean like I get off the hook, but I do at least acknowledge it, right?
I think that like, as a performer, I think I was in the past, like, trying to fit into a certain mold. And I think at a certain point, and maybe it's because there's just so much more open dialogue about the differences and the inequities and everything within the music community, not just the music community, but everything. I think like that kind of just gave me a sense of freedom to experiment and just to like rethink what am I doing and why am I doing it the way I'm doing it? Who am I really? Like, and I think it's also a process of like getting older and getting more mature and becoming more secure in who I am, and just really feeling comfortable putting my authentic self out there. And I think this is probably a challenge for a lot of women, is, finding ourselves in these spaces that are dominated by cis white males and feeling like we, in order to be accepted in those spaces, we need to do things a certain way, perform a certain way, act a certain way. And even I'm really involved in the women and trans skate community up here in the Bay Area. I volunteer for an organization called Skate Like a Girl. And it's the same exact thing in skateboarding. It's a gnarly sport, and
yeah, for real. Yeah.
everybody in the past has felt like, oh, in order to skate, I have to be a rager. Like, but what I've learned through the organization and just like meeting a real diversity of different types of skaters from all walks of life, all identities, is that, everybody's doing things differently, and that's okay. And that's totally awesome. It's like, everybody gets to be creative and just enjoy this thing the way they want to. And that's just, I think, becoming more and more accepted these days. and maybe it has to do with social media and people, sort of seeing other people doing things differently, just having more visibility of the different ways people experience different things. I think that's been really inspiring for me. So yeah, I'm inspired by the youth. Like,
yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt, but like, I think that, like, again, we kind of tend to focus on social media doing its best to make everyone feel unfulfilled and terrible, but it is got an incredible ability to connect people across not just, a city, state, or country, but across the world together with like-minded experiences, and that should never be short. So,
yeah.
Didn't mean to interrupt. Please continue your thought, though.
Oh no, for sure. And I would say too, like, a couple years ago, Jeff and I moved to the Bay Area from Los Angeles, and it's been really awesome for us because, and I don't know, everybody might not agree with this, but I love the Bay Area because there's like such a strong sense of community up here. And I don't know, it's just a different vibe. I think I got re-inspired being in a new place, and just seeing people doing cool things that are for and by the community. And I think, like, living in LA for a long time, I didn't really feel that necessarily. And so it's just a different experience. Being in a new place kind of like sparked a lot of things for me, and just being around different people.
It's it's the Bay Area.
I used to live up here.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's a lot of things, but it's also someplace where you're surrounded by a lot of activism, and some of it may be effectual, some of it may be ineffectual, but it doesn't matter. It's more of a just how everyone rolls to a certain.
I love it. I love it. It's like part of the lifestyle up here, and that's really cool to me.
Yeah, and it's almost something that you can potentially take for granted when you say move cross country. They're like, oh, right.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about this all the time. Okay, that's fine. we can work on that. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely something where, for where the creativity has gone, you're surrounded, it seems like, with the right area, the right culture, the right folks to kind of really lay into it. Now, when it comes time to, from a creative process, are you changing what you're doing lyrically or vocally to sort of serve the mission? And the reason I ask is because you have, like, some of the lyrics are almost like, what I think about is when there's like protests and people are marching and like, oh, we're just marching. Okay, let's chant something. Okay, let's chant this, right? And usually it's stupid. Usually it's dumb. I hate it. But every once in a while they'd be like a really good one. And it occurs to me that, like, the times, in the lyrics you have, like, oh, that would be a good like people protesting chant. And I mean that as a compliment, because that's harder to pull off than people realize.
Yeah.
But does it factor in when you're writing the lyrics? You're thinking about how other people are also engaging with the music and engaging with the experience of either listening to the record or, presumably at some point a live experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that my creative process has really changed that much. And I don't really think about, like, the chantiness of the songs.
It's not all chanting, but I don't mean it's all.
I mean, like, I've always loved, with Turbo Lightning and everything, like, I've always loved anthems and, anthemic songs. So I don't think that my songwriting or lyric writing has changed that much. And honestly, like, I don't think about it that much. I feel like everything I do is sort of intuitive. And I actually heard someone say something that really resonated with me recently. I was talking with one of my favorite artists. Her name is Dior Greenwood. And she's a Dene, a Navajo skater and artist. And she creates these really cool skateboards where she wood burns traditional Dene Navajo patterns onto the skateboard.
I love it.
Yeah. And I was talking with her about her creative process, and she was saying, like, sometimes I don't even know what I'm doing, or, where it's coming from. And I feel like it's just my ancestors coming through me. Like sometimes I just get lost in the process of making it, that like there's just something inside me that is like coming out and I have no control over it. And so like I kind of relate to that. Like I don't overthink the songwriting process, and sometimes it's just a matter of what comes out. And that's why sometimes it takes a long time, because like for me, I have to be like in the right frame of mind and the right mood and really be inspired to be able to write. So it took 3 years to write and record this album. But yeah, I wish I was that person that could just like churn stuff out. Some people are so good at that. Like I heard there's this one skater, a trans skater that I follow, Cher Strawberry, who's also a musician, and I think they put out like a 30-song LP recently, or they're going to. And I wish I was that person that had that many words.
Yeah, I mean that can be a blessing and it can be a curse too. It's its own it's for sure. But it also, there's a deliberateness. It's very deliberate with what you are doing, and it also strikes me that in this era of authenticity, that everything's like looking for very authentic things, that kind of comes through. And it's not to say that
Thank you.
I mean, it's meant as a huge compliment, because there can be stuff that is authentic that doesn't radiate that, but it does it without it kind of low key does that. And I think that's to me, that even if something is maybe meant to be ephemeral, I think that still comes across as timeless, right? Like I think of like Ohio, Neil Young, right? That he wrote that after Kent State. And that is somehow so of its time, but it's still it comes from the heart. It's an authentic thing. It's like an authentic reaction to this horrific event that occurred, and it's still resonating. It all sounds to be a good song too, which is if it's a good song as well. But it just occurs to me that doing all that in a vacuum can be very difficult. So being very community oriented. It seems like you've got a strong system of other, fellow like-minded artists and activists and things like that you're kind of in constant communication back and forth with, which to me that should be the modus operandi for the world that we existed. But it kind of seems like there's been this pressing push towards individualism overall without supporting the needs of the individual. And I wonder if you had thought on that.
Yeah, definitely. Like sometimes I think like recently somebody heard our song and said that, and this was totally meant as a compliment. They said something about how it made their anarchist heart so happy. And like, that was really cool. But I also like personally don't subscribe to anarchism, because I really believe in community and the collective. So I don't know everything about anarchism, but my understanding is it's more about the individual. And I actually really believe in social programs and government programs and all that. So yeah, I think like that was always sort of a sore spot for me with the ideology of punk or punk culture. I come from a communal culture, and I have never really related to any form of individualism. And so also kind of like piggybacking off of that, punk, I think over the years has become sort of a catch-all for music that's resistant or political. And I don't really feel represented by that. As you were kind of saying earlier, it was a culture that was shaped by cis white males. And then I guess you would say that cis white women had some revolutionary moments against that patriarchal culture. But I feel even even there, like there are a lot of missed opportunities, and like some people just really miss the mark in terms of looking at all of this through an intersectional lens. So that's what I'm kind of like hoping to bring to the table is just, I'm definitely not the first woman of color who has made music like this or tried to make music like this, but I'm going to do what I can to elevate myself and elevate other people like me, other women and femmes like me. So yeah, I'm not, yeah, I believe in the collective. I am not about individualism at all. And I think that one of the things that has been missing for me for a long time making music is I haven't felt for a long time like that sense of community in music. For whatever reason, I don't really know why. I think maybe because like there was a point in the last several years where like playing music felt really just like a socializing thing or like a nightlife thing or whatever. And I just wasn't feeling that after a while, got into my 30s and I was like, this is my social life, but like, how can I make it more than that? Like, how can I make it more meaningful for me? So yeah, I think like I'm really inspired being around a few of the different communities that I'm a part of, like Skate Like a Girl, like I mentioned. I also volunteer with this organization called Brown Girl Surf, and just surrounding myself with people who are like-minded, who think like me and look like me. It's really valuable for me in terms of, just understanding what people in my community want and need, but also helps me to understand myself and like where I come from and why I do the things I do, what I believe in. I'm inspired by the people in my everyday life. And so I think like that's where a lot of the inspiration comes from for our music.
I mean, it seems like a practical application of shine theory in that way, right? It's which is a real thing. It's rather than being competitive with each other, you push each other to do more and to advance anything, whatever the thing happens to be, whether it's like understanding, justice, or just good times, or maybe all three of them put together. Who knows? Yeah, and again, it seems. On one hand, it seems so simple, but the other hand, it just seems like that there's not really a lot of institutional avenues for including that. Like it's like what you're doing. It's not so much it's an aberration. It's just that it's I don't see it that much, and it's something. It does it feel like what you're doing is building like parallel super systems and parallel structures to create this, or do you feel like this is something that's just naturally gonna click in, fully realized, fully formed as this is what this is?
I think we're figuring it out along the way. I'm trying to, involve community as much as I can. I've never been, and I don't think any of us in the band have ever been really great at like figuring out how to best release music and like all the processes behind that and like promoting it. What's that?
It's like almost like it changes week to week anyway. So it's like once you learn, it's different next month. So
yeah, exactly. But like even in all my years making music and playing music, I'm still like, well, so how do we put this out? Like, how do we promote it without like, just being in everyone's face? And how do we actually get this to as many ears as possible? How do we get, it starts with obviously like making good music, first of all, which
ideally, yeah.
But I don't know. I just like it feels so intimidating every time. And especially like me kind of being like, I guess I would call myself anti-capitalist. Like I know it's a strong statement. Like I don't do anti-capitalism perfectly. I don't think anybody really does, but just like, how do you release music like in a non-capitalist, non-hierarchical method and get people to actually hear it and care about it? It's still an unanswered question for me and for all of us in the band. And so like what I've just been trying to do like organically is just reaching out to people in my community and being like, hey, here's my song. Like, it's really important to me. I think it resonate with you. Like, tell me what you think. It's, it's yours. Like, basically, like, we're making this music for everyone. Like, it belongs to anyone for whom it resonates. So I've just been telling people, like, this is a song. Like, if you want to use it for anything, if you want to put it in a film or a video or whatever, if you feel like sharing it, like, this is yours. So like that's just been my personal organic approach. And I've been like reaching out to some, organizations that I feel are aligned with some of our messaging and our mission. And some of them actually get back to me and they're like, oh my God, like this is amazing. I'm so excited by this. I'm so pumped. And I love to hear that. And I just want to keep reaching people that way. But yeah, if anybody out there has like any idea how to put this album out in a way that is not going to feel yucky to us in the band, let us know, because it's a struggle. Like right now we've decided that we're going to like release the songs as singles and like just try to create as much content around the songs as we can. But it's really hard. It's really hard to make videos and even just post on social media all the time. Like I really struggle with that.
Yeah, and it's something where that's a larger societal construct that we've built around ourselves, that like this is the way that you connect with everyone, but the act of doing it is somehow designed to make you feel like you're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, I'm encumbering someone's attention by doing this.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with, who's profiting, right? Because if you're not paying for a service, chances are you are the product. And that's the truism that unfortunately we all have to deal with on a regular basis. And I don't have any, I guess I'm just providing color commentary for that, but it's difficult. And it's difficult when it's any new entity, because I feel like there's this almost casual disdain for something if it's not already like a known commodity. That's also another default reaction that unfortunately comes from a place of cynicism, which are making ostensibly somewhat optimistic music. So the idea there could be that, someone might come in for the tone and stay for the message, I guess is what I'm saying. Which is, there's worse ways to get people, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I find it interesting. Certainly I find the band fascinating, and I think the music's great, regardless of all the other stuff. But I think it's all the more important because there's all these other things attached to it. And it's probably a bit of a lonely road right now, but I think the nice thing about social media is that people can find out about things quickly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it's a meritocracy. Let's not kid ourselves about any of that. But the ability for that to happen does exist. And I think that, this is something where there's a lot of idiotic sentiments back in 2016 about, whoa, punk rock's going to get really good at least. It's like, oh God, really? That's what you're okay. So that's my first level reaction to that, and still is. But the second level reaction is, well, this will be a catalyst for something, and I feel like a lot of that manifests itself with the Black Lives Matter protests. Like more like direct actions, things along those lines. Which there's an argument to be made that a lot of that had to do with quarantine burnout as well. And this global pandemic that we all were dealing with. But I think people are ready for new stuff, too.
I think so.
Like more so than I think I've seen in any of the rest of my lifetime that I'm aware of. So I think what you're doing is fascinating. And it's, again, I say this as someone that's like a fan of the other stuff as well. But I think that what you're doing is, like, it's who am I to say whether something is important or unimportant? But what you're doing is achieving all the stated goals and desires that you're going for. And the question now is just, where does the fire ignite? So
the world may never know.
Yeah, I don't have the answers to that, but I think I do my part to help propagate it. So so Dana, this is awesome. I'm so glad, and I want you to come on again when you, I don't know, send out through BitTorrent. I don't know, like how this ultimately is going to manifest itself, and we'll go through each of the songs kind of in depth at that point if you're into it,
Sure.
Because I think that, look, I think there's some artists that you find out too much about the song and you're like, oh, I like that less now. But I think that this would be, and I think that's very important. So to be clear, there's a couple. So there's the single that just came out that's on all the streaming services. There's another one kind of coming relatively soon. Is there any kind of known schedule right now, or is this just a pay attention to the social media, I guess, kind of situation?
Well, we just put out this single called Interdependence, and we have another single coming out in August called Vacation Glow. And I think we're going to put out a song every month pretty much, probably towards the beginning of the month. But yeah, no mystery.
And what's the mindset for live presentation? Is there going to be any planning towards that in this uncertain world that we live in?
To play shows? I think we're open to it. Like, half of us live in the Bay Area and half of us live in Los Angeles, so it's a little bit harder. We did get asked to play some shows recently in LA, but depending on whether we can all be at the same place at the same time on the same day.
Yeah. No journey to Standing Rock, but it's still a bit of a haul. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we would like to, but also, like, how are people playing shows after, like, not practicing for a year? I don't know.
Well, let me tell you, that first practice is rough. Like, you have to be very with yourself. Let me speak from experience on that. Where it's like, hey, sure, my hands are spaghetti. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then for speaking personally, it seems like muscle memory kind of takes over after a while. So that's, you don't forget how to play music.
Yeah.
You just don't have.
Hopefully we play like at least one show in the next couple months.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad that the ship is leaving the docks, so to speak, because it's very rare that I have someone on the show that is doing something that's very much of its time. But I feel like what you're doing is very much of its time, which doesn't mean it can't be timeless. It just means it's of its time. So I hope that people check it out. I hope people engage with it. And so I guess last thing, Dana, and I want to thank you for coming on the show too. This has been awesome. And of course I had Jeff on a little bit back, and just like everything he was telling me about this, like, wow, that sounds great. Like I want to hear more about this. So I hope that everyone will check everything out as it comes in all the various social medias. But I do need to ask you, it's one canned question that I have. It's the only canned question that I ever ask. And you can interpret this however you like. But why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? Why do I do what I do? I feel a sense of responsibility to be a voice for, for the people and for the issues that I feel are just important in this moment. I do what I do because I think that we need a revolution, and that revolution starts in our hearts and our minds. And so that's what I want this music to be for people is, you know, just kind of a way to engage in this journey of inciting radical change, because we need that right now. And there's no other options.
True that. Dana, thank you so much. I'm gonna play us out with so the record is gonna be called Interdependence as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
However it manifests, fully formed from the head of Zeus, as we already established. I'm going to play us out with one of the songs from it. And I just thanks so much for coming on. This has been great, and I hope that folks go follow you on all the appropriate things that people follow folks on, and learn more. And I'm excited to see like what you pull off with this, because it's great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Conan. It's been fun.
All right, till next time.
All right, bye.
There she goes, Dana Viloria, Wavebreaker, Turbo Lightning, Batwings Catwings. So excited to see what they come up with. Let's hear a tune.
culture, white feminism, extractive capitalism, environmental genocide, borders, endless wars, imperialism, money in politics, corporate bailouts, oligarchy. Elevate Black lives, elevate Indigenous lives, trans lives, reparations, rematriation, housing for all, clean air and water for all, universal health care, mutual aid, a living wage, environmental justice, food justice, a free Palestine, collective liberation, interdependence.
Interdependence. Wavebreaker. Awesome band. Really stoked to get down with what they're throwing down. I think what they're doing is really great. So we're gonna play Vacation Glow too. And again, I'm gonna throw all the appropriate social media stuff in the show notes. So thanks for listening, everyone. This is Vacation Glow Wavebreaker.
Gotta take some time away. You've been waiting all your life to see the world. Every day's your holiday. Forget the locals, see the sights. You see the world, see what you like. You heard the world is yours, so you go on and go anywhere you wanna go. Passport your backstage pass, but no secret sites are not for show. No, get away, go home, yeah, yeah, yeah. Vacation glow, vacation glow, vacation glow, go home. You think you found your place, but we kindly hope you leave without a trace. Best if you stay away, 'cause no sacred land is not for sale. No, get away, go home, yeah, yeah, yeah. Vacation glow, vacation glow, vacation glow, go home. 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 You think the world is yours, so you go on and go anywhere you wanna go. Passport your backstage pass, but no secret sites are not for show. Vacation glow, vacation glow, vacation glow, go home.
Vacation Glow Wavebreaker. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have her on. I'm a fan. I'm a fan if you couldn't tell. The social media handles are like Wavebreaker X, I believe. So Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. Go follow them. See what they're up to. The name of this show is Conan, Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thanks so very much for listening to it. The show airs live on RadioNope.com Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Archive later, ProtonicReversal.com. Always free. No ads, no sponsors. No kidding. Patreon.com/ProtonicReversal if you want to get episodes sooner and help support the show. $1 a month will achieve both of those goals. What a time to be alive. If you like the show, consider subscribing, either as a podcast or on the ever-popular YouTube platform. Sharing, liking, sharing around, reviews, all that stuff helps people find the show. It all matters. Thanks for folks that do that.
Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea.
If you like what you hear, consider doing so.
Anyone within the sound of my voice.
Lots of great stuff coming up. Excited to share it with all of you.
I've got 50,000 watts of power.
What else? Anything else? No, I think that's about it.
Ionize the air.
Just make sure to check out the bands. Consider dipping into a couple of the episodes that you maybe don't know. Folks you don't know. That's why one of the things I like about this show.
Microphone turns sound into electricity.
Just stay safe out there.
Can you hear me now?
And take it easy.
Out on Route 128, in the dark and lonely.
Take it easy.
I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on Earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl! It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency,